The CCTPE in Leipzig, Germany welcomes you to our mini-series, The Interview.
Welcome everybody to our second piece in our webcast of our Center for Private Equity and Corporate Transactions. My name is Bernhard Schwetzler. Our topic today is doing business and doing M&A in difficult economic situations. And my guest today is Michael Moritz.
Yes, well, thank you. Very, very happy to be here and to have the opportunity to chat and take up these questions.
We're glad to have you. He has advised more than 150 successful transactions. He is a managing partner of Carlsquare. Carlsquare is one of the leading M&A advisors for German mid-cap transactions. According to the recent league table of Merger Market, you are listed on number 2 with respect to the number of deals. So I think that you are well equipped to discuss the topic. Michael started his career in M&A more than 30 years ago at the Treuhandanstalt, and as you may know, the Treuhandanstalt had the difficult task to privatize what was left from the former GDR economy. So the least to say, I can say that you started your career under difficult M&A conditions and learned a lot of things there. My first question relates to the overall economic conditions that we currently see. They are, the least to say, challenging. We have COVID-19, we have the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Hamas attack on Israel. And what is clear that this has negative implications on the number of transactions that happen. It also negative implications for the size of the transactions that happen. That's quite obvious. What is less obvious, however, is are the deals that do happen, are they any different with respect to their terms and to their conditions in compared to the ones in good times? So the question is, do you observe systematic differences between the deals that happen in good times and those that happen in bad times, in difficult times?
Now, in good times, I think there is a time before the deal. Before the deal, you approach a company, you get into you gauge interest, you get offers out, initial offers, confirmatory offers, and due diligence, and that whole process in good times moves ideally quite fast, and if you have an attractive asset, it can sometimes move very fast. In more difficult times, it's hard to begin with to impose any kind of deadline. Everybody, the buyers say, let's see. Everybody sort of tries to test how tight that process is, and due diligence takes more time because nobody wants to. Nobody ever wants to do a mistake, but definitely in more difficult times, everybody is more cautious because typically any buyer is spending other people's money, so he has a fiduciary duty, and he has to go into some kind of board or investment committee. And so everything takes more time. And if everything takes more time, the chances are that in the company, which is a living organism, things don't go as planned. Yeah? So there's a deviation to budget. Some lead person gets fired, gets ill. Some client cuts the amount of services or products they're buying, and so there's a deviation from business plan to and what was presented in a memo to what you find in a due diligence. So there's much more back and forth on this, and that then typically leads to the question that you're raising. So what happens with the deal terms? So everybody is much more cautious on any kind of deviation from budget and the expected, and more risk adverse. So there will be an effort sort of to compensate that, and that is typically deferred payments, some kind of deferred payment. So that could be an earnout, and there's a second element which, adding to it in these days where financing is difficult, is the word vendor loan, because buyers have challenges to fully finance their acquisition. And they turn to the sellers and say, could you envisage to be part of that financing effort and have some kind of deferred payment, then maybe not contingent on any performance, but really as part of the total financing package.
Okay, so you addressed already the second big topic of today, that is earnouts. Yeah? So let me just briefly explain what that is. Well, it is actually a payment that is contingent on reaching certain targets and crossing certain thresholds in the later time, so in the future. And of course, buyer and seller need to agree upon the specifics, the lifetime, the threshold that has to be crossed, the payment that has to be made, and the like. And as you already suggested, financial theory would also say that in difficult times, earn-out is a good way or a convenient way to bridge the gap of the expectations between buyer about the price between buyer and seller on the one hand. So is that something that you are also observing in your day-to-day practice, that currently the fractional earn-out is higher than in good times?
Yeah, now I have to watch who's watching this interview because I'm also on the sell side and I don't want all my potential investors sort of to refer to this interview. But I think the honest answer is yes. Yeah, so there is an increase on the ask of having an earnout. But maybe if I can so that's the quick answer. Maybe if I can step back just a little bit. So our typical clients are technology companies, high growth companies, and we have a lot of service business. And I would like to differentiate that the frequency of earnouts a little bit between those. So in a very general way, if you buy a service business, so that could be IT services, a digital agency, any kind of B2B service business, where often the owners have a strong role in building the relationships to the B2B clients, and also in keeping the team on board. The buyers in any subsectors of that business service of the business service industry, the buyers will want to have some kind of earnout element. It's almost excluded to have a deal without an earnout unless it's a very, very large company. So unless it's 500 million revenue company, but in any sort of we're talking small and mid cap here, then you will, as a standard, have an expectation that this will be a deal where there's a 60 or 80% fixed payment, and the remnant is either earnout or a variation of that called put option scheme. The second group, bigger group, where you turn into earnouts more often, is technology companies, where there's a lot of promise that the technology will bear fruit, but sometimes not so much proof yet that it does. But a lot of the value is depending on the pickup of a certain technology, or sometimes even if a technology at all works, because it is in the moment of being developed. Rollout is maybe only later that year or the next, and then you have quite a digital outcome. So if this flies, then 30% more revenue, 50% more EBITDA. If it does not, then it's zero. It's not a proportion of that. It's just flat out not happening. And then you have earnouts which are packed to these very specific events, which are then because it's very hard to assess that technology risk and likelihood of that coming through. So that you have more often. And of course, these companies also have less trading history because they are younger. So if somebody looks at a company that has maybe only 5 or 7 years of trading history, it's very hard sort of to assess what is is it just a hockey stick or is it a true development? And so you have a stronger urge and necessity sort of to build sort of a bridge of trust between seller and buyer to have that element. And then on top of that, now you have more uncertain times, and in irrespective of irrespective of the fact that in this tech sector or the service sectors you have the earnout as a more frequent concept. Now, because of uncertain times, you even increase that.
Okay. So, one question that comes to mind is when negotiating the terms and trying to introduce an earnout, you need to have some sort of an idea how this trade-off is going to work between €1 cash price for an asset and I don't know, XYZ euro earnout. So in that sense, what do you observe as methods that in practice are used in order to determine the value of an earnout?
Mm-hmm. And of course, science would like this to be more scientific and systematic. My answer, if you're talking to a practitioner, so the practitioner's answer is, I think it depends very much on the risk profile of the entrepreneur. I have clients who are totally convinced that they will reach 100% of the earnout, and who are very obsessed in raising the cap of that earnout, because often an earnout comes also with some kind of cap, because the buyer has to have sort of a clear financial commitment. Yeah? So if you have an uncapped earnout, suddenly, a 100 million deal could turn into a 200 million, and then, the buyer suddenly is out of cash. So you, as a prudent businessman, you cannot, as an acquirer, you have to cap it so that you have a maximum financial exposure. Yeah? And then there will be a lot of discussion on how we make sure that we can overachieve, and what is the compensation. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, where I have clients who say, well, I'm only looking at the fixed price, and the earnout is only icing on the cake, and I'm not doing the deal if the fixed terms are not satisfactory, and even if the earnout has a lot of potential. So it is a very, 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 very individual expectation valuation, from attributing zero value to 100%. And are there? Would somebody do a little Excel model and try to attribute, expected earnout achievement value, and then deviate a price, and deduct a price out of it? Yes, but I would say the gut feeling is more important than that Excel model. No?
Well, that unfortunately already answers a part of the next question. That is, of course, a theory would suggest, as is a contingent payment. Theory would suggest that you somehow try to shoehorn some option pricing model and apply it directly. So can I have any hope that these models will make their way into practice?
I would say in the small and mid cap, I would be more cautious. I think if you have, let's say, a professional seller from a larger corporate, where you have your smart ex-students who are more at home with this concept. I think I could imagine that. If you have the founder who's selling a business and who's doing that maybe only once in his life, he will look at such a concept, sort of with intellectually understanding it, because they're clever people, engineers, or they have an MBA from a great school in Leipzig. But I think only with a limited, they will only attribute sort of limited value to it. I'm fair, because they will be. I think they will be more trusting their gut than the model, however clever it is.
Well, thank you. At least you're honest.
Yeah. Which is not saying that it's not worth spending time on rationalizing the irrational. Yeah. So we are of course, and that's that's much of what we do as an advisor, to show the options of what you could be doing and what could be the outcomes. But I would say in practice, it's not all sort of back of the envelope, but probably closer to that than to an option pricing model.
Yeah, and I think the benefit of these models is also that they're helpful in telling you on whether we are talking about, I don't know, a 5 million or a 50 million ticket. Then when you negotiate, at least let's say they are good for some of the aspects and some of the questions. So my final question is, you have 35 years of experience in the M&A business. Perhaps you have time to read a good book from time to time. So my last question is there any recommendation of a book about M&A, or a book about finance or economy as a whole, that you would recommend to our students or to our listeners to read?
Well, of course, we're tech investment bankers, and so we like our team to think about innovation and the challenges that come with it. So crossing the chasm, or the innovator's dilemma. this would be our pick, for our interns to beyond financial theory to think of this sort of tech environment and what is happening and what is driving it also.
Okay, so thank you very much for being with us, and hope to see you soon in other occasions. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Thank you.